Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So we do have a couple of major delays to talk about today, and I mean, if you've been following the game industry over the last couple of years, it's not necessarily overly surprising when you hear about delays anymore, but in this situation, we are talking about a huge, and I mean a huge, Xbox console exclusive. So this does affect Xbox's 2022 lineup, so we're going to talk about that and whether or not people are kind of overreacting to this situation. So we'll go over that later on the video, and then also a new PlayStation 5 model has been discovered online. This could actually be very beneficial for Sony, so we'll talk about that one as well. Per usual though, if you do find yourself enjoying the video, go and hit that bell notification and subscribe button below. That way you can keep up to date with all the latest gaming news, and hit the like button as well, as it does help out the channel a ton. Besides all that though, let's just go and start the video off with some very welcome Nintendo news, as a new but old game was announced for the Nintendo Switch, being Alan Wake Remastered. Yes, Alan Wake Remastered will now be heading over to the Nintendo Switch this fall, and it will run natively on the hardware. Now, unfortunately for you physical collectors out there, this will only be a digital release, but even then, this is a fantastic game and a great addition to the Switch library. If you like third-person story-driven games, you definitely need to do yourself a favor and check this game out. To this day, I still do believe that the original Alan Wake that launched way back on the Xbox 360 as an exclusive was one of the best games on that console, and I still think that it's great all these years later. And as we start to head into Alan Wake 2, this is definitely a game you're going to want to pick up. Now, actually about Alan Wake 2, they did give us an Alan Wake 2 development update where they stated this: everything with Alan Wake 2 development is going really well. We are in deep production, have a lot of material, and a great deal of the game is playable. So that's already a fantastic sign right there. But then they continue on to say, but we've been talking for the past couple of months and have come to the decision here at Remedy, along with our wonderful publisher Epic Games, that we will not be showing anything big this summer. So that right there is kind of the unfortunate part about this, because previously they did say that we were going to get some type of update on this sequel this summer, but there you have it. Unfortunately, Alan Wake 2 will not be at any of the upcoming showcases next month in June. In the meantime, while we're waiting on an Alan Wake sequel, if you haven't already played the original title, of course there's that remaster available on the Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and now on the Nintendo Switch as well. Definitely check this game out if you like story-driven third-person games, even in the slightest. Next up here, Ubisoft did provide an update on some of their highly anticipated upcoming games and narrowed down their release dates. This includes Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope, and then you also have Skull and Bones, which they do state that all three of these games are on track to release this fiscal year ending on March 31st of 2023. So according to Ubisoft, unless things change, which I mean you never really know by this point when it comes to game delays, but if nothing changes, all three of these games will release over the next 12 months. And that's really good news, because Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, this has potential of becoming a very big game. One thing that we have been seeing over the last week is that next Avatar movie, it has been garnering a lot of interest. Already over 150 million views for a teaser trailer. That is absolutely crazy. So if this comes this holiday as well, side by side with that movie, this could potentially be a very, very big release for the game industry. Now, as for Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope, the first Mario + Rabbids, I still believe, is probably one of the most overlooked and underappreciated games in the Nintendo Switch library. That is actually a fantastic game, and really just one of the better Mario spin-offs to ever be made in general. And so far, the sequel is looking equally as good, so definitely nice to see that one is still on track. Now, as for Skull and Bones, this is a game that I'm not entirely sold on just yet, but at the same time, this is a game that has received various delays, and it is starting to look like its release date is sooner rather than later. So definitely, overall, a very good update from Ubisoft. Let's go ahead and talk about Xbox though, as they did announce a couple of Bethesda delays today that will certainly be felt this holiday. We'll kind of come back to that here in just a moment, but first let's actually take a look at their statement made here. We've made the decision to delay the launches of RedFall and Starfield to the first half of 2023. The teams at Arcane Austin, RedFall, and Bethesda Game Studios, Starfield, have incredible ambitions for their games, and we want to ensure that you receive the best, most polished versions of of the game. So there you have it, and this obviously is going to be very disappointing for a lot of fans out there. Starfield was that big Xbox exclusive releasing this holiday, and not just that, I mean, this is just one of the most anticipated games in the industry right now, considering this is Bethesda's next big game. This is their first new IP in decades. Of course, they've worked on some of the greatest RPGs of all time, such as Fallout. They've worked on Skyrim, which to this day still plays fantastically well, and it is viewed as one of the all-time greats. So there's obviously going to be a lot of disappointment with this, and I completely 100% understand that. At the same time, though, if you all have been following the channel, I'm pretty consistent with how I feel about delays, and that is, if they need the extra time to make it, then I don't really have a problem with it. Now, undoubtedly, this is going to be a blow to Xbox's lineup this holiday, but does that mean that they should rush this game out to the market and then be criticized for a rushed, buggy mess? I mean, it's so interesting to me that we have seen time and time again here in recent years these games that get rushed out to the market and then they don't meet expectations. They're just some kind of buggy mess. They get overly criticized and then they just ultimately lose respect from gamers. You take a look at something like Battlefield 2042. The game should have never launched in the state it was in. You take a look at something like Cyberpunk 2077, which is coming from CD Projekt Red, which was a beloved studio, and a lot of people still absolutely do love that studio. But they also lost a lot of trust with fans when it comes to Cyberpunk 2077. So should Xbox and Bethesda simply rush Starfield out this holiday just to bolster their lineup? No, absolutely not. You have to have a longer-term vision than that. Again, I understand the disappointment, especially when it comes to Xbox fans. The 2022 holiday lineup for Xbox is not looking all that exceptional right now. Now, they might have a couple of surprises along the way. Forza 8 could release this holiday, and then maybe Xbox somehow gets some big third-party day one releases for Xbox Game Pass, and that could kind of soften the blow a little bit. But I do know that this does make the holiday for this year a little less exciting. At the end of the day, though, if the end result is good, if Starfield does turn out to be a good game, then I think that that's all that really truly matters. Everything else will kind of be forgotten within time. I know that there's going to be some overreactions online when it comes to this, and there's going to be that quote-unquote outrage out there. But I've been pretty consistent when it comes to these delays. If the end result is good, that's really all that matters. And you can really take a look at all of the big three when it comes to this. Delays have been pretty inevitable in the last couple years, as we've seen. But nonetheless, I mean, you take a look at the big three being PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox. All three are dealing with this problem. You take a look at something like Horizon Forbidden West, which was originally supposed to be PlayStation's big holiday release last year, and they delayed that game to early 2022. At the time, that was a really big deal, and a lot of people made the same fuss that we're hearing right now about Starfield and how PlayStation's lineup didn't look all that great for the holiday. But it's funny how quick narratives change, because Horizon Forbidden West, it turned out to be a great game as it released earlier this year. And then everybody was kind of talking about like, oh, PlayStation has this stacked lineup for early 2022, because well, they absolutely did. And then you take a look at something like Nintendo, and they had to delay Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. That's now set for an early 2023 release. Again, though, if these games turn out to be good, that's what everybody's going to remember. As an example, The Witcher 3 was a game that was delayed multiple times, but you don't really hear people talk about that all that much. Instead, people just talk about how great that game is, and it's cemented itself in history as one of the best RPGs ever made. That's what ultimately people will remember. So let's just see how this plays out and see whether or not Starfield turns out to be a good game or not. And I guess if there's a silver lining here, the good news here is that Starfield and RedFall will both get a deep gameplay view soon, which more than likely will be next month at the Xbox Bethesda Showcase. Now, actually, speaking of 2023, it's actually starting to look like a pretty exciting year overall. Again, we have multiple delays into 2023, being Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, and now Starfield and RedFall. All three of these games are set for an early 2023 release, and now, on top of that, Dead Space Remake is confirmed for a January 27th, 2023 release as well. So yeah, the beginning of next year is looking pretty exciting, and I wouldn't be all that surprised if some other games got delayed into 2023 as well. And then of course you're also going to get some surprise announcements along the way, so definitely very exciting stuff here. Nonetheless, though, Dead Space, this is a game that a lot of people are very excited about, because a lot of people do view the original Dead Space to be one of the best horror games of all time. A lot of people rank it right up there with the Resident Evil franchise, and that right there is kind of the hope. Capcom in recent years has just been doing such a spectacular job with those Resident Evil remakes, and what we would like to see is EA do something similar with Dead Space. This is definitely a game that deserves that remake treatment, as horror games in general, they rely so much on atmosphere, and, well, Dead Space, yeah, it has a lot of atmosphere, to say the least. Hopefully, this Dead Space remake ends up being good and has a lot of success, and that would be big for the Dead Space franchise as a whole. If this game turns out to be a success, maybe we could start to see more Dead Space games once again. Again, though, go ahead and mark your calendars for January 27th of 2023. Next up, a new PlayStation 5 model has been discovered online, and no, this is not some PlayStation 5 Pro or a PlayStation 5 Slim or anything like that. Rather, this is an update to the base model, but this is still interesting nonetheless. This was spotted over in Japan as the company received construction design certification in April for a CFI 1200 PlayStation 5 device. Now, this appears to only be a small revision with updated radio equipment, but the reason that this is noteworthy is because this could actually help Sony alleviate a major problem that they're having right now with the PlayStation 5, and that is simply they just cannot manufacture enough units to meet that initial demand. The PlayStation 5 is still selling out insanely fast, and this has been a problem for them all generation. But last year, they did report that there was a PlayStation 5 internal redesign in development. That way they can maybe alleviate supply chain issues caused by the global semiconductor shortage. So while on the surface this revision might look like a minor change, this could actually have a major impact for PlayStation this year, especially for fans looking for a PlayStation 5 console. This is actually very welcome news, and what's interesting to me is that this actually kind of follows what PlayStation said just a couple of days ago at their fiscal year report, where they said that they were very confident that they were going to meet their expectations this year, which was to sell 18 million units. Now, that would mean that they're looking to sell about 7 million more PlayStation 5s this year compared to last year, despite going through the global chip shortage. But even then, they seem very confident that they will reach their goal this year, and maybe this is one of the reasons why. Maybe they feel like this could fix some of those problems with manufacturing the PlayStation 5. Now, if you remember right, though, this is actually the second revision for the PlayStation 5 since it first launched. Last year, they put out a revision that stripped out some of the heatsink that caused quite a bit of controversy online. That was a whole big thing, but hopefully with this next revision here, we'll start to see improvement when it comes to PlayStation 5 manufacturing throughout 2022. Let's go ahead and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and with so much talk surrounding a Nintendo Switch successor, I wanted to ask you all, do you want to see the Nintendo Switch successor stick with that hybrid console design? And you all overwhelmingly want to see that hybrid console continue on, with 76% of you saying yes, while only 17% of you said no. Now, I completely 100% agree with you all on this situation. I think the Switch has a brilliant design and fits Nintendo perfectly. I've always really enjoyed Nintendo's handheld consoles, whether it be the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo DS, the 3DS, or whatever. I think that they do a phenomenal job with their handheld devices, as their games, they just feel great to play on the go. It also sets them apart from PlayStation and Xbox. They're not really competing with them in the same way that they're competing with each other. I mean, sure, it might not be as powerful as something like the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5, but it really doesn't have to. Most of Nintendo's first-party games are not centered around photorealistic graphics. Most of their games tends to be a little bit more artistically driven, and they look great on a handheld device. Now, some games struggle a little bit more, such as the Xenoblade franchise. They don't look the best on a handheld device, but that's something that can be fixed with a more powerful hybrid console. So yeah, I really think that they just need to stick with this hybrid design. It has been doing very well for them. It fits their games perfectly, and a lot of people will buy games for the Switch specifically to have that benefit of playing them on the go. It's just a great overall personalized feeling. So I really feel like Nintendo, they don't need to overthink this. They need to just simply make a Nintendo Switch 2. Don't get fancy or cute with the name. Just call it a Nintendo Switch 2. Give it more powerful hardware. Keep that OLED screen, because that is very, very important. And then make it backwards compatible. I think if they do all of that, then Nintendo's in good shape for next generation. The thing about Nintendo, though, is that they do have a way of surprising you. They just kind of do their own thing, so it does make you wonder on whether or not that they'll have a surprise in store for us for this Nintendo Switch successor. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.